On today's episode of the College Lacrosse Show, we have our first ever interview on the College Lacrosse Show, Syracuse midfielder Sam English. We also chat about Maryland's overtime victory over Loyola, another good win for Hopkins, and a nice victory for UNC in their season opener over Michigan. Also chat FAFO, Sicko game of the week, and look ahead to this weekend, including Syracuse versus Maryland. Let's get right into it. Episode 3 of the College Lacrosse Show. All right, welcome back to episode 3 of the College Lacrosse Show. You're Dan Arestia. I'm Jon Donville. Really excited for a great third episode here. We have Sam English coming on from Syracuse ahead of their big game against the Terps. Lots of other good stuff as well. We're going to chat FAFO, Sicko, lots of other good stuff. But first of all, Dan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited we have our first guest for this week. We've been trying to get somebody, good on, and I think we started out with a bang here with Sam English. So, pumped for that. And then, we as of this weekend, I think we're going to have basically everybody's in action. The Ivies are joining the fray. Notre Dame gets going. They play Wednesday against Cleveland State, and then they got Marquette this weekend. So, defending champ in action. We'll finally get to talk about them a little bit. And it's all happening. We're all in action.
Yeah, absolutely. The Ivies being back, always a good sign. Obviously, I'm a Cornell fan, so that part's really nice. And, we expect 3 or 4, maybe more of those teams to be amongst the best in the country. So, we'll start to get a picture of what this thing looks like. Let's, I think, do the same thing we did last week. Any just kind of major thoughts from week 1 or kind of the week then that was?
Yeah, I think a lot of interesting results out there. I think the game that I would start with, or I guess, I thought North Carolina played a really good statement game against Michigan. I know we can kind of talk about this more in depth in a second, but that was a result that I thought was telling. I thought Notre Dame played like a good, well-executed, sound game plan that they didn't ever try and do too much. It was just a methodical, well-played game by them. So I thought North Carolina had a great result. I thought, and we'll touch on this later a little bit too, but I thought Delaware and Utah had the funniest result to a lacrosse game I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. Funniest result since the infamous gloves incident, yes, I would argue.
Exactly.
Which I think also was sort of tied to I think they had some of the Delaware game too, actually.
And then I think you have to talk Hopkins. Hopkins now 3 top 20 wins already. The only other team in America with 3 top 20 wins. Shout out to the D2 Limestone Saints who have beaten 3 top 20 teams. But doing that early is certainly a statement, and it got reflected in the media poll this week as Hopkins moved up into the top 5.
Yeah, D2 talk. There you go. Don't come for us. Few things I just wanted to rip through quick. First of all, I wrote an article about just kind of things I was looking at going into the season, and someone commented on it saying, I think we're going to see more zone this year, especially as it relates to not sliding. That has been anecdotally very true. Almost everyone is playing zone. Some teams are playing a lot of it. Michigan played it. North Carolina played it. Loyola played it a bunch. Towson went to it when Syracuse got rolling. Zone is not new. We've seen teams play zone. We've seen good teams play zone. It just feels like we're seeing more of it, and in my opinion, seeing it in February is different and kind of rare. We're still seeing a ton of failed clears, and is that February lacrosse? Yes. I also think there's just a lot of youth on the field everywhere. We talked about that last week, but it was a story again this week, a lot of failed clears. And then the last thing I had is it kind of went over my head in the offseason about the change to the face-off rule where if you violate, you don't get to take the next one. And then they got rid of the 3 violations equals a penalty. I think that's been a very positive change, and I enjoy that rule.
I'm loving that change too. I think that's way better than the violations for a penalty thing. And I love the idea of having to have either depth at the position, or if you can't find depth at the position, you need to be careful and mindful, and otherwise you're going to be giving face-offs away every time you jump. Yeah,
depth is really the best part. I think with the shot clock and some of these new rules and the way that the game has kind of just changed and gone more up-tempo, every team now is playing 4D middies, 6-0 middies, if not more. We're seeing a bunch of teams play more, 2 face-off guys. It's nice that more kids get to play in the game, because I think if you go back and look at some box scores from the late non-shot clock era, there's some teams trying to get by with 18, 19 guys. And, the more kids that get to play in games, the better. Let's get right into it. Keep it moving this week. Let's talk UNC Michigan. So you kind of had some good points on this already. I'll let you lead it off, but the big takeaway obviously is exactly what you want to see from North Carolina defending their home field.
Yeah, I think, you start with Michigan, obviously, not their best game. I went and looked. I think they're 0 for their last 8 against the ACC. I think their last ACC win is they beat Notre Dame in like 2018, 2019 even, I might have it. Michigan, to the failed clear point, failed on 8 clears in this game.
Yeah.
And if you kind of go through them, they're 17 to 25, but go and look. They failed to clear in the first quarter. James Patan gets a ride back, ends up with a goal. Another failed clear in the first quarter where Taylor turns it over, results in a goal. Failed in the second quarter, Dupuis with a caused turnover. They didn't score on the following possession, but then, you get another one where Pillings turns it over on the clear. That results in a shot that hits the post, so another near goal. By halftime, Michigan had failed 5 clears, and there were multiple goals that came out of it. They failed another one in quarter 3. Duffy rides it back, scores a goal. Like, it's where these games can be decided if you can't clear the ball consistently. You add that up. Michigan had an illegal stick penalty in this game. Like, these are the things that you just like. You can't have this stuff happen. Carolina scored a goal on the extra man that followed. They went 3 for 6 on extra man in the game. Like, it's easy enough to just see, like, they couldn't clear and they couldn't stay out of the box. If you're playing a top 20 opponent, or even the team that's like, fringe top 20, you're going to get punished for that. You're going to lose the game. Carolina played some zone. I think that makes sense. They have some personnel losses. You lose Tillman down low. They have another defenseman in Prohaska who's playing banged up. Like, if you're kind of working through some injuries on your defense, playing some zone can help because it can be it's not easier, but like physically demanding. It's a different way of playing defense. And I don't think Michigan can really solve the zone all that well. So, it worked kind of for 2 reasons for them. And then Carolina took 16 shots, I think, in the first quarter. Like, they came out hot, very hot. I think they took a total of 16 shots over the next 2 quarters combined. So I found that as I watched it, I thought, look, this Carolina team is playing within themselves. They're being opportunistic. They're causing these turnovers and punishing Michigan for making them. The ride obviously is a key indicator of that. As I looked at Carolina sometimes last year and other times in recent years, sometimes you saw a team with guys on offense where it looked like everybody was trying to score like a 5-point goal. Like, everybody wanted to make the big play that made everybody go. Like, everybody was kind of hunting that. And this didn't look like a team that was interested in doing that. They were much better at sharing the ball and, again, being opportunistic and playing within themselves. There was much more kind of mature way to the way that they played. So I think that carried through the score line for them. So I know I kind of just let Michigan have it there a little bit, but I think a lot of that is because of the opponent, because Carolina played as well as they did. And I would also throw in Andrew O'Barry, Harvard transfer, the SSDM. Oh boy, like 4 ground balls, 3 caused turnovers. He picked up a pole to play some man down. Like, I think he's a pro. He had a special game for them too. I think you got to shout out O'Barry for their performance in that game.
Yeah, I had O'Barry written down as well. Just very good. Some good hustle plays. This is going to sound like kind of different than what you're saying, but it's actually part of the same kind of umbrella. And UNC scored a lot of unassisted goals. And in 2025, that is super, super important because of what I've been talking about. Teams generally don't want to slide. And if you're not going to slide to Carolina, like, look out. This is what a team with a bunch of high-end recruits is supposed to look like. Guys with a ton of juice who can get their own. Harshberger, I think, had the first one. Duffy had a couple. They have guys who can really break you down and shoot it. And then we talked about in the very first episode of the show, Kabiri, Duffy, some of these super freshmen last year, who's going to pop? Well, Duffy looked really, really good and really good at getting his own shot against Billings, who's going to be one of probably the best defenders in the country there for Michigan. Another thing I noticed about Duffy, kind of an unusual spot that he likes to initiate his dodges from. He doesn't like a typical X-Man. He doesn't like to go from right behind the goal. He kind of starts in the corner. It allows him to sweep almost like a midfielder and shoot it on the run. Kind of different, but the last guy I could think of who really liked to go from there was Grant Ament, because he could go the long way and feed as a lefty, or he could cut back and feed as a righty. I think Duffy's got a little bit of that. I think he's a little bit more shoot first whereas Grant was obviously such a prodigious passer, but that just kind of reminded me of that. And then Gian Fricaro was very, very good. Was named a captain. I think his was probably better even than the stats suggested. I don't think I didn't have them written down, but I don't remember if the stats were absurd, but just a very solid, and you can tell he's a leader for them. And Barry's good too. There's very similar to Jack Montfort on Hopkins. These 50-year guys that come in the rope have been kind of a revelation for them. So really good. And then you mentioned it, but Kai Przatska? Awful pronunciation there. He was awesome, I thought, on Ryan Cohen. And if you win the battle with your best player on offense, which they did with Duffy, and you win the battle with the other team's best player, which they did on Cohen, a pretty good outline for success there. When you also combine Wambach was, as expected, very good. So an excellent start for Carolina.
Yeah, I think it's telling that they left Barton in the midfield and let Kai play on Cohen. You think of Barton as their best pole. Usually you go best on best, but letting Barton stay at LSM, I think really helped them too, to kind of win between the lines there and really take away a lot of midfield dodging. And then it's a good comparison on Duffy. Another guy who dodged like that is Jordan Wolf. And I know that's a different level of comparison, but that idea of like, I can just use blazing speed and I'm just going to start in the corner and just outrun my guy to a spot and be dangerous from there is, I think is a Jordan Wolf type of play. So, I thought Carolina week 1, I thought you saw everything you would want to see from that team.
No doubt. Let's jump to Hopkins, Georgetown. Another good win for Hopkins. They just keep, basically all of the same type of win. I think they've all been pretty similar. They stay rolling. But what did you kind of think of that one?
So I looked a lot at kind of the Georgetown side of this. Specifically, the Hoya shooting was not good. 12. They put 12 shots on cage in the game.
Yeah, 34 shots 11. Total, 12 on goal. Yeah.
Yeah, if you only put 12 on cage and the other team scores 11, like you're in a tough spot. So I think a bright spot for Georgetown though is the ground ball and the ground ball stat. I know like recorded ground balls, I think went 27-19. I personally, when I do this, I don't know if you do this too, but I try and separate ground balls from faceoffs. So, usually it's like this team crushed faceoffs and ground balls. Well, like no shit. If you win all the faceoffs, you're going to win a lot of ground balls too. So it's like extremely crude and not at all like really good, like scientific data or anything, but I just go and I subtract faceoff wins from ground balls and I see what's left over and kind of be like, get a general idea maybe of how ground balls were really going, like non-faceoff ground balls. And Georgetown won that stat, I think like 16-9. I think Hopkins had 9 ground balls that didn't come off a faceoff if you just do it my gross weird way. So, I feel like that's important because you hold a team to only 9 ground balls. Like you're winning possession, you're winning opportunities. You just kind of have to convert them. But that edge for Georgetown I thought was significant. And then the Georgetown extra man, I think was in a tough spot. Again, trying to go positive than negative here, but extra man 4 times for a total of 3.5 minutes on those 4 penalties. Because one of them was a 2-minute hit on Scott Smith. In that 3.5 minutes of extra man with 4 opportunities, they took 7 shots, 1 hit the post, 2 were saved, and 4 missed the net. No goals in there. So 330 of extra man coming up empty and forcing just 2 saves, really. That I think would be a problem. Stout only had to make 6 saves for Hopkins. I don't feel like the Georgetown shot well enough and put enough pressure on Hopkins with the opportunities that they had, right? With a ground ball advantage, with a ton of extra man time to shoot like that. I thought, was really what did them in. I thought the Georgetown defense honestly was fine. I think we all know Banks is a star. I think Robert Plath, Connecticut bias, starting as a freshman for them down low, I thought has been good through their first few games. Caused 3 turnovers in this one. I thought he played well, played comfortably. And again, 3 caused turnovers against a team with that kind of personnel. Like there's no easy matchup on the Hopkins offense. I thought Robert Plath was a solid player for the Hoyas in that one.
Yeah. My notes on this one was that both these teams, but especially Hopkins is kind of like, I feel like our read on them on this show is like exactly spot on. I think their defense is awesome. Kilrain and Smith are 2 of the best in the country. They might have, 2 Smith will probably be the first teamer. Kilrain is close to that. Tyler the freshman, is very good. The defensive coach Jameson is really good. So and Stout is great too. I thought he looked good in the game, even though he didn't make that many saves. You could just tell he's kind of playing with some juice. Had a nice cost turnover. And then on offense, they have Melendez on the wing. You feel good about that. You have Collison sweeping. The one play he just muscled through a defender and shot it. And they have the early offense stuff. And then they got to figure something else out. That's the reality. And to have three things that you feel good about is pretty good at this time of the year. But when we talk about Syracuse, they have like 4, 5, 6 things they feel good about. You have Roa on a short stick, you feel good about that. Leo on a short stick, you feel good about that. Splina behind the net, that's a good time for you. You have like picks for Hiltz, that's a good time. So I think Hopkins got to figure out something else that they can go to. But they're playing super hard. They're well coached. Their defense is very good, if not awesome. And yeah, they're 3-0 against really tough teams. And I think it's interesting for Hopkins and then also for Cuse. Cuse's offense has really been rolling so far, but with these two fan bases that are so hungry to be back, that I think everyone wants being back to take the shape of the dominant offenses that they've had historically in their time. And the reality is that both of these teams are probably going to win on the back of stout, badass defenses. So
really good close defense units for both of these teams for sure. Yeah,
absolutely.
Really good.
So, then Georgetown's still figuring out pieces on offense, as we knew they would. You just don't replace Bundy, Vardaro, Haley, and others in a year, and especially if you're not going to go with 50 years from the portal and figure it out. So I think I think it's pretty much what we probably expected to happen in this game.
Yeah, I think this is kind of what you would expect. And I think, the Hopkins shout, I think, is a good one. I think it's interesting that like a question we kind of had before the season with Hopkins is, well, who's going to be Jacob Angelos, right? Who's going to feed from behind the goal? And the answer is kind of nobody.
Nobody.
Like the person at X is just whoever happens to be standing there to transfer the ball to the other side of the field. That's kind of the way I feel like their offense, when it's at its best, is working. Like their guy just, you get a dodge from one side, whether it's Collison or Melendez or whoever, and then, transfer through X to the other side. And, I think you could see a guy like a Jimmy Ayers, do well as kind of a secondary dodger against, a defense or a defenseman who's closing out on him, that kind of thing. So the idea of like the guy from X distributing the way that maybe we were used to seeing Angelos at his best, who's going to be that guy? Like kind of nobody. They haven't really needed it to be somebody yet. Yeah,
you wonder if maybe there's an invert option there that's comfortable behind the goal, but we'll see. Like I said, credits Coach Millie and his staff for being 3-0. Touch quickly on Loyola, Maryland. I don't know. There's only so many things to say in this one. Maryland struggles for a lot of the game, turnovers. Spanos turns it up in the fourth quarter. The defense was solid all the way, and they ended up winning it in OT, aside from Ridley being a really hard place to play and Coach Toomey being a really good coach. I didn't really have too many other notes, just a kind of a weird February game.
Yeah, I think weird February game is kind of part of it. And, you want to give Loyola some credit. I've talked about this before. I struggle to be like, you're going to rank Loyola because they lost close to Maryland. Like sooner or later, I'm a Bill Parcells guy. You are what your record says you are. And if you lose, you lost, even if you lose close. To your point about zone, I think the way Loyola went from zone to man and kind of changed looks kind of throughout the game is something that was very effective at kind of keeping Maryland, uncomfortable and unable to kind of get into like a really good offensive rhythm. Another February thing is, look, last week, Bryce Ford, Jack Dowd, Noah Armitage, Matt Keegan, they combined for 5 goals, 5 assists. They take 12 shots. Against Loyola, they combined for 1 goal and 1 assist, and those are both from Keegan. I call this out because that group is in particular is the portal guys. And if it's not even Valentine's Day yet, and you have an offense where a lot is going to be driven from these portal guys, you might just have some weeks where I know they had fall ball, I know they had preseason, but it just takes time. None of that is like a game together. So game action together for those guys, I feel like it's not surprising if you see a game where like they kind of just don't have it, or they just kind of have a little bit of a stinker. So you kind of mentioned, Spanos there. I made a note of him too. Obviously 4 goals in the game, 3 of them in the fourth quarter. But I think, again, I think For Loyola, I think you took Maryland to OT. That's awesome. You did it when you only got 2 points, I think, right? 2 points from Minikis, right? Only 4 shots from your best offensive player and 2 points, and you still took Maryland to OT. The only senior on the team to register a point so far this year is Remy Reynolds, who is a defenseman. So, you're kind of like you got goals from 6 different players. I feel like when I look at Loyola, and I came into this year and I was like, it's gonna be rough. I looked at how much they had lost. I didn't really have a ton of confidence in guys I hadn't seen as much. But I think you feel okay about the fact that, look, you got a balance of scoring against Maryland. You were there in overtime. Everhart's a redshirt freshman who's scoring big-time goals for you to send the game, to overtime. So I'm warming on Loyola. I know their record is not great, but I am warming on trusting them to win games in a conference that can be wide open. To your point, I think Toomey deserves a ton of credit. I don't think you mentioned, when we started, this is his 20th season there. You don't have that job for 20 years without being able to develop players and put guys in positions to be successful against anybody. So I think, tough to take the L. I think Toomey, though, deserves a lot of credit for having these guys, I think outperforming maybe what some people might have expected to see from Loyola so far this year.
Yeah, no doubt. I wrote an article last week about national champions and, kind of some looking back on the last few years. The fact that Toomey was able to put that group together at Loyola, a Patriot League school, really one of the best teams of all time by any statistical measure. So that's all you need to know about the quality of coaching there. Let's move on to FAFO. I think let's talk about Cuse as we look ahead to the Maryland game this week. Also have a great interview, like I mentioned, but let's jump into the FAFO. I know where you're going with yours, so why don't you lead us off?
I've got a couple. One, of course, is the one you're probably thinking of, the obvious one. Julian Radosic is a FAFO guy this week. 7 caused turnovers for Fairfield, a new program record. The NCAA has only kept the stat for the last 15 years or so, but the record for caused turnovers in a game is 8, held by a bunch of guys, but he was one off of that. Really, I wanted, Radosic stood out the most, but the entire Fairfield close defense unit was monstrous in this game. I was there for it. Lehigh had 1 goal at halftime. They scored 7 in the game, but the 3 of them that came in the second half, 2 on extra man, 1 on a face-off scoop and score. In 6-on-6, they couldn't get anything done with their attack. Radosic, Eli Adams, Rory Thompson all deserve a ton of credit for the way that they played down low. Lehigh was shuffling guys from midfield to attack and back and forth and doing anything to find some space. And by the time the game was over, their attack was literally just running to get the ball to the midfield to try and find something else somewhere else. So the Radosic in particular, but really the Stags' close defense is a FAFO of the week.
Okay, mine was my first one is our guy Kai at North Carolina, number 33. Just a really good game against Ryan Conan. Really good feet. Not a big dude, but Tolman's out, and Kai just seemed like a real pest to play against. And, is he going to guard, the big bruiser types? Probably not. But if you have quick guys like Cohen who really want to trip you up, he was special. And I thought Carolina kind of recognized the athletic advantages that they had, and especially when they were in man-to-man, really pushed out and tried to emphasize those athletic advantages. That's good coaching. That's what you should do if you have, elite players. And I think Cohen still got a few numbers. And the one thing Carolina's got to kind of work on is they got picked off a lot. But I thought Kai, out of respect to him, I'm not going to screw up that last name as badly as I did before. Also, Connecticut guy, so I'm beating you on your own turf
Ridgefield
here.
Guy.
Ridgefield, Connecticut guys. So, a special performance, I thought, getting Carolina season going.
I'm going to give a FAFO to the Utah sideline. They found out this week, again, losing a game in one of the funniest ways imaginable. So about 2 minutes left in the game. They are down by a goal. They call for a stick check on Logan Premtage, the face-off guy. That is a podcast in and of itself, is whether or not that is something you should do, should not do. It is one of the only unwritten rule debates in lacrosse is, do you stick check the face-off guy? But look, they did. Of course, they got it. It's been an entire game worth of face-offs getting taken by him. Of course, his stick is warped and all over the place. It's been 2 hours. So they get the face-off call. They get the 3-minute stick call. Utah does. So Delaware's going to be man down for the rest of the game, right? Because 2 minutes left. Luke McNamara scores on extra man. Utah ties the game. Oh my God. And then ball don't lie takes over because Delaware gets the ball on the ensuing faceoff because Utah violates after stick checking the other team's faceoff guy, and a freshman, Bennett Palmer, scores to give Delaware the lead while they are man down from the faceoff penalty or from the stick check call, and Delaware holds on to win. That is a find out and a ball don't lie moment for Delaware. So Utah sideline found out this week about stick checking the faceoff guy.
Yeah, for those who are wondering maybe why face-off specifically, basically the idea is that face-off stakes warp because of how you have to take the face-offs. So the kind of common perception is that every face-off guy would fail a stick check. So usually you see teams not calling it against the other team's guy because their guy would presumably fail it as well. But certainly a good unwritten rule there and just an all-time bad finish. I'm going to keep it with an off-field one as well. The UVA equipment staff, what are we doing? You're ruining one of the best uniforms, color schemes in college lacrosse with a long sleeve, a sleeveless jersey over top of a long sleeve that is both two different colors of orange and not the UVA color of orange. That was a FAFO for them. I really don't know, what we're doing.
Yeah, I thought that look was terrible. I know, like, the jersey thing is people have different tastes. I thought that the Virginia jerseys looked horrendous. I'm gonna do one more.
Okay.
I'm gonna do another find out for 10-man rides because we saw a fair amount of them this week, and many people are saying this. You're hearing it all the time now. But look, don't make me tap the sign. You have to pressure the ball if you are 10-man riding someone.
Yeah, they're going to shoot it.
A pole can score from the length of the field if you are not bothering him and he gets to just step into it. I was watching the Penn State-Villanova game on Flow Live Sports, but watching the Penn State-Villanova game, and Penn State's poles were taking shots full field that were, like, getting saved and, like, on net and good shots because Villanova wasn't always pressuring them. And the announcers are like, it's a risky shot, or like, oh, that's impressive that he can do that. Like, you don't really see guys do that. I'm like, no, it's not impressive anymore. Poles can do that now. At this level, if you're a D1 pole, scoring full field is just something that guys can do. If you are running a 10-man and you are not pressuring the ball, you are going to get scored on. You are going to find out. Please, 10-man rides, be better.
Yeah, also, I understand there's a little bit of kind of selection bias because you're, a lot of times running the 10-man when you're down goals. But the Venn diagram of scoring a goal from your own half of the field and winning the game, like the center of that thing is massive. It's kind of the inverse of a stick check, like the illegal stick call. I can't remember what game we were just talking. Oh, the Michigan game. Well, Michigan gets an illegal stick. Like, you just always seem to lose games when you get an illegal stick. That's like an all-time bad omen for a game. And the opposite of that is the full field goal, because Collison had one too in the Hopkins game when he just stepped in and roped it. I totally agree. Flow Live, Sicko game, totally. I actually didn't mind. I kind of like the Villanova broadcast. It's basically a history lesson on Villanova lacrosse and greater Philadelphia lacrosse as well. So I kind of like it. Let's jump in. That's a good segue into the Sicko game of the week. I'll lead us off here. I only have one because there's a lot of actually really good games this week. So, it's hard to kind of mention the Sicko stuff. But for me, it's Dartmouth Bucknell. You had a lot of great chat last week about Bucknell. They're really good, return a lot of their best scorers. And then Dartmouth, I'm just curious to see, the next evolution of the Matt Kerwin era. They have a phenomenal staff there. Kerwin's the head coach. Mikey Herring is the one of the assistant coaches. He played for Kerwin at UVA, and I remember hearing when he was playing that they would actually let him sit in the game plan sessions because he wanted to be a coach, and they kind of gave him an internship. Thought that was really just a really cool story. Matt Witcher, who's a very good coach and a fantastic player in the summertime. Then Ajax Zapatello, my former teammate, one of the best players in the world. So they know what they're doing over there. Expect them to, have a better year this year. And obviously the Bears coming at the end of the year with the Ivy schedule. So important to try to get some wins here early. But that's my Sicko of the week.
Yeah, I wrote down two, and that was one of them. for basically the same reason. I like a lot about Dartmouth. I like Kerwin and like the staff there. It's fun that Ajax is on that staff and his brother Hopper Zappitello. Great
Yeah.
set of names in the Zappitello household. But Hopper is out there playing for Dartmouth. But Kerwin's got like 5-star players coming to Dartmouth. So like that program's coming. So yeah, that was one that I watched. And then the other one I noted, UMass Lowell and Mercyhurst. And I know Mercyhurst's second week in a row that they're a Sicko game. My promise to you, the viewer, is that I will not just pick Mercyhurst games all year. That said, I gave you some good calls last week with Mercyhurst. Landy Moore and Jeremy Phoenix Lefebvre both were ridiculous. Jeremy had 5 assists from the midfield, even though they lost the game. But look, the Riverhawks, I'm really watching this for UMass Lowell. They won this past week. They beat Merrimack. I think that was the program's first win since like 2022 or 2023. You got first-year coach and Drew Kelleher, who's got some nice recruits coming there. So AJ True had 15 saves in that win for them as a freshman. So I think like the Riverhawks are deserving of some of your attention because they won that game. I know they played midweek and they lost to Holy Cross, I think by 4 or 5, but UMass Lowell, I think, is a team that's a good like Sicko game candidate. There's intriguing things there. There's stuff worth watching in a first year of that coach getting a win for that program against Merrimack. You know, there's names there that are going to be stars. Most of that roster is underclassmen, so getting yourself used to watching some UMass Lowell games now might not be a bad idea.
No doubt. We had, I forgot to mention this to you before, so we're going to do it live, but we had a viewer reach out asking if there's any games you recommended watching back from last week if you don't have time to watch a ton. My favorite game of the week was Carolina, Michigan. Just a lot of good talent out there. You got one for the people that if you're going to go back and watch one, you should watch?
Carolina, Michigan's a good one. I think Maryland Loyola is a good one. I think to watch the Loyola side of things, specifically, as we said, the way they kind of went from zone to man is fun to watch as a way to keep an offense kind of off balance. I think that's a good one. I don't know if there's another one. Hop Georgetown you could watch, but it was kind of ugly, so I don't know how much you missed there if you want to see kind of some unfortunate shooting. But yeah, I would say I would watch Maryland Loyola again to try and find, number one, what Loyola did to make the game as close as it was, and number two, the places where Maryland is going to look to clean up right away. You mentioned turnovers and some stuff like that, but
for sure,
I think that's a good one to go watch again.
Awesome. All right, let's let's kick it to Sammy English, leader over there for Syracuse, a really good dude. Going to be obviously a great player in the NLL, likely a 2-league pro, and chat with him about the start so far, the upcoming Maryland game, some fun off the field stuff as well. So let's kick it over to Sammy English.
Do it.
All right, welcome to the first ever interview on the College Lacrosse Show. Sitting down with Syracuse midfielder Sam English. Sam, what's going on, man?
Hey guys, how are you guys doing?
Just fine. So, big one for you, obviously. A good couple wins, really, for you. A good one over Vermont, and you know, a nice win against Towson that I think a lot of people watched on Monday. So, just kind of talk about how you think the start of the season's gone for you guys, and kind of where you're at.
Yeah, it's been a really good stretch for us to start the year. Good win against Jacksonville, beat a good Vermont team, and then we knew Towson was going to be a really good squad. Coming in that game on Monday and felt really good out there. Had a really good fourth quarter, and we're pumped about that win.
Sam, you know, I watch you guys play. Obviously, you're out to the 3-0 start. We've seen between the legs goals. We've seen shovel shots. The ball is humming around. Is there a feeling among you guys that's like, I think we might just be having more fun than everyone else right now? Because that's what it looks like when we watch you play.
Yeah, I think Cuse has always been known for having fun and being that kind of flashy team. And I think it's all the other things too that I think this makes this team pretty special. I think we're gritty on the ground balls. Our defense might be more fun to watch than our offense is. And I think, yeah, we're all having fun. We all know what the plan is and what we're capable of. So it's been a great time playing with these guys for this first 3 games of the season.
I think the obvious takeaway from the Towson game, one of the obvious takeaways, was that Luke Rowe can really shoot the ball on the run. What's he like as a teammate, a line mate? What's just kind of been like playing alongside him?
Yeah, I mean, he's unbelievable. He's a pretty special player to watch. He's got both hands, can rip it as hard with either hand. He hammers the ball. That shot he had on Monday was outrageous. And he's joined Mike and I's line this year, and we're pumped to have him. He's the man in the locker room as well. So he's been an awesome addition to our line, and I don't know. I think we all kind of knew what he has in store and what he's capable of, and him showing it on Monday is probably what you'll see for the rest of the year.
And second question, how badly would you spike the ball into the ground if you had to use his lacrosse stick?
Yeah, like straight to the ground. The way he pulls it, holds the ball so far back there, and it's just. I personally, yes, would hammer the ball straight to my feet.
I watch the way Luke plays with you guys on that midfield line. I look at your attack, which is also loaded. The fun thing about your guys' team is that there's just so many mouths to feed, but everybody just seems happy when somebody else scores. It's this like you have a balance to finding points for everybody that is hard to achieve with that many stars on a team. What do you think is kind of the secret sauce for you guys for just being like, that unselfish with production, with points, and in a time and age where, when so many guys get ranked just by how many points you had, and that's it. There are guys out there who feels like we're giving up a little production so that the offense as a whole can be better.
Yeah, I think just us being close on and off the field is part of that, and I think there's nothing anybody else really wants more than to win, and I think that's kind of been ingrained in ourselves, especially this year, and knowing what we can do and what this team has the potential of being, and I think we also have guys that kind of just fit into roles properly. I think you have Roa, who has both hands, who can hammer the ball. Leo, who's like an elite scorer. He's basically an attackman who's playing in the midfield. Finn, who's unbelievable off ball, unbelievable in the two-man game, super slippery. I can go both ways, and Hilty is elite and has one of the highest lacrosse IQs I've ever seen. And Joey's the same way. He's an elite dodger, has both hands, knows how to score, and sees the field better than anybody else. So it's in our second line too. Like Trey's killing it. Bert has been there. His experience. T-Mac is similar to Roa, but a little bit younger and a little bit less experienced, but has that potential to be just as good. And it's been cool to watch kind of us fit into these roles and kind of figure it out together, and knowing that other people's success is going to be good for our own success.
You talked about guys you're close with. Obviously, I think your roommate, a guy you're really tight with, is Michael Grace. How is that kind of adjustment to the Division I level you think been for him? He's looked pretty good, I think. And kind of how have you helped him with that, and what have you kind of seen out of him in the early going here?
Yeah, I mean, he's killed it. I think he's came in and fit in perfectly immediately. He might be the most loved guy on our team. One of the funniest dudes out there, and I think he's a really good lacrosse player too, and you've seen it for these first 3 games. I think maybe there was skepticism about him making the jump, but we kind of all saw it from the fall that he's capable of being that guy that to fit in with Fig and Bill. And he's so calm with the ball in his stick, and he's such a smart player, and every time he slides, it feels like he causes a turnover. He's an animal out there.
I want to ask, a lot of sidelines, when there's a replay to be seen, you kind of see coaches and people huddled around like an iPad trying to see it and everything. Coach Gate, it looks like, just spins around and takes a look at a 60-inch flat screen that's just set up back there. Why did it take so long for people to figure out to just do the giant flat screen TV and not just the iPad?
I don't know. We showed up for our first practice of the Dome, and there's the flat screen TVs there, and we were like, holy crap. And but yeah, it's funny. It's funny coming off the bench or off the field and seeing where you went wrong or following that interacting with that last possession or whatever it is. But it is funny having the flat screen back there. And I think I saw a tweet that was it was Coach Gates staring at the flat screen. And it was finally we got, or who needs an iPad when you got a flat screen TV on the sideline or something like that. But it's pretty funny to watch him on that. And every time something close happened, I think yesterday, or Monday, Weishauer came across the crease, almost landed the goal. He turns around, can I see that? Let me see that play. But it's been pretty good.
That's awesome. I honestly didn't pick up on that. That's sick. Okay, so Terps coming in this weekend, obviously a big one. Team you've obviously played against a number of times in your career. What's kind of the focus as You played some really good teams so far, but probably fair to say going up a level here, and
Yeah.
you gotta kind of meet that test. What's the focus for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you said. Like, it's you're stepping up another level of ability in lacrosse, and they were in the Natty last year, and I know Tillman always kind of figures out what to do, and is one of the best coaches out there. So you're kind of just preparing for everything, and they showed that they can score and they can play defense against Loyola last weekend. So just kind of preparing that for that. I mean, Maryland's always a team that you go into and you got to be dialed and you got to be ready to go starting on the first day of practice that week. I know I'm 0-4 against Maryland, 0-2 against UJD, and I don't think any of the guys in our locker room have beat Maryland yet. So it's a big one for us, and it's important to get this one under our belt.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of the matchup there. Obviously, big matchup, and starting at practice is where you start doing it. I imagine part of you wants to be like, let's just keep it to business as usual. Let's do our preparation. Let's get ready. But part of you also wants to be like, no, we got to like take it to a different level because it's Maryland.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of balance the let's just do what we do versus let's do a little more hard because we got Maryland coming to town?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of things. I don't know if you're going out to practice and you're practicing harder, but I think it's a slightly different mindset, and it's a different beast. It's like you know what you're going up against, and I think at least myself and I think most of the guys are ready to like maybe dial in or like you had 2 days of preparation for that Towson game where it's like you're kind of following the same game plan as what you had versus Vermont, except that Towson's a little different. They're a little bit they gave Hopkins a really good game. And now you have this full week to prepare for a really good Maryland team that you're probably taking a step up in skill and ability, and just tuning in that mindset. And you're not going harder than you would before, but you're bringing your brain and you're getting ready for Saturday.
Wanted to ask you about your brothers. Your brothers, Brooks is at Hopkins, Ty's at UNC. Undefeated start for the English boys so far. Little brother on the way to Brown, I think, next year. In season, you guys are obviously at different schools. What's the kind of communication like between you guys? Or you get a chance to watch their games? And, how good does it feel, obviously, that everyone's still undefeated?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, we talk almost every week. I gave Ty a call on Friday before his game. I talked to Brooks after our game on against Vermont, and it's really fun. It's the most fun I have watching the sport too. Is sitting down and getting to watch my brothers play. It's tough on the parents who travel to try to make every game. I think this Friday they're going to be at UNC for their game on Friday, and then they're going to be at Hopkins at like noon for their game, and then driving down to Maryland, taking the 5-minute drive down to Maryland for my game. So it's kind of a mess, but it's really fun to watch them play, and they're both killing it right now. And Ty got the move to offense. Brooks is finally healthy, so I'm pumped. It's super fun to watch them, and I'll get to play them both in the Dome this year, so that'll be pretty cool.
That's a heck of a weekend.
Is the first guy to lose gonna get roasted in the group chat? Or
yeah,
what?
Who knows? Yeah, we'll see what happens. Right now, I'm 1-0 against Ty. I think I don't know if Brooks has played. Brooks has been hurt for both the games or all the games that we had. He's had the opportunity to play us. So we'll see what that looks like later on in the year.
Dan, you got one more question, and then I got one to end it.
All right. Well, I was going to ask you about the jersey you got on there, the Team Canada jersey. What do you got tonight?
I think I got Canada 3, Sweden 1, McDavid goal, Crosby goal, and McKinnon goal. I guess. I guess I just picked the 3 best players, but
that's the point. That's the idea.
Yeah, exactly. We got 3 Americans and 3 Canadians in the house, so we'll be dialed into the TV for the next week or two.
That's great. Last question I had was for those of our listeners who didn't get a chance to catch you on Back of the Bird earlier in the fall. First of all, go listen to it. You have an interesting pregame routine where you don't listen to music with any words in it. And at the time, Oogway Ascends from Kung Fu Panda was your kind of go-to. Is that still the last song, or what is kind of taking its place here for the 25 season?
It's typically Oogway Ascends, and then actually over over in January we watched Interstellar, and Mountains by Hans Zimmer was like our
Nice.
that we like everyone in the house was listening to that. So that's one's been good. I actually this year I had to make the I didn't have to, but I have a lot of free time on my hands as a grad student, and we needed someone to make the pregame mix, so I was on duty for the pregame mix, and I was asking around if guys wanted maybe some Star Wars or some other Hans Zimmer in the pregame mix, but no love on that. So
Okay.
so I'm keeping that in my headphones for pregame. It's typically Uwe Sands or Mountains now by Hans Zimmer from Interstellar.
Okay, love it. Wow, you heard it here first, folks. Well, hey, thanks for coming on, man. Good luck this weekend. Rest of the way, been obviously really fun to watch, and go Canada, go.
Thank you. Later, guys.
All right, thanks, man. Okay, that was our friend Sam English. Great interview there. Appreciate him doing that for us. Appreciate John Stark over at Syracuse helping us get that set up. And we hope to feature more interviews on the show weekly with maybe some alumni, some current players. So that was a good start there. Let's use that as a segue. Maryland, Syracuse this weekend, really the first kind of mega matchup of the year. I know Hopkins has played some big ones, but two top five-ish, not top five-ish, two top five teams. Two undefeated teams. What are you watching for this weekend?
I think watching Q's so far, you when you watch them, you can't help but, or at least I can't as somebody who tries to be like do some analysis about it, but look for ways to try and disrupt Syracuse or be like, if I was to try and slow this team down or win a game against them, how would I do it? And I think Vermont gave you a couple of places where you could try and be successful. Number one was the face-off spot. Vermont's Henry Dodge went 12 of 18 against the Qs, and it didn't look like the Orange had a ton of depth behind Johnny Mullen. Like if he's not feeling it, it looks like they don't really maybe have a super reliable option after that. So you have a chance to have a possession edge. Maryland has used a pair of face-off guys at this point. They've used Sean Crater and they've used Shea Keithler, who both have taken about 20 draws. Both are over 50%. So I think Maryland kind of has the opportunity to look at the face-off spot and say, maybe if we can find one of these two guys who's got an edge against Mullen, or we can just kind of split it between both of them and just try and keep him off balance. That's a place where maybe we can tilt possession a little bit. And then I think, Vermont went to the extra man, I'm going to say 6 times against Syracuse. And Syracuse can commit some bad fouls. I found in like their first couple of games, some of them are, like Joey Spallina, I love you, but getting like a cross-check foul, like 70 yards from your own goal, like not a good penalty. Not a good penalty. But Vermont went 0 for 6 on those. And John Tillman ain't going 0 for 6 on the extra man against Syracuse. So I think if you're Maryland, Q's needs to stay out of the box. You need to play a cleaner game. Do not give Maryland an opportunity to beat you from the extra man. And I think the Terps from the face-off spot, if they can keep Mullen off balance and win there and keep possession kind of leaning that way and limit the opportunities for the Q's offense, I think that's a recipe for Maryland to be successful.
No doubt. I think the big takeaway for me watching Syracuse is the pull priority, which what I mean by that is the decision of which midfielder gets a long stick is really difficult because you saw what Roa did. I would guess that he probably gets it after he shot all those. Guarding Leo in the low angle on the wing with a short stick is really tough as well. So then you say, okay, well, maybe we slide a couple guys up, try to put pulls on both those guys. You still have Sam English, who's our guest today, one of the best initiators, first Dodge guys in the country. And then Finn Thompson has been outstanding so far this year. He had a slow start to the year shooting last year. Ended up even percentage-wise not having the greatest year shooting. 53% on the year, looks super comfortable. And you just have to know if you put a shorty on Finn, you're going to get 2-man with Spallina right away. And that I don't think is a good thing for you. Again, we talked about this earlier, but if you're accused, you feel good about Leo dodging, especially from the wing. You feel good about Roa dodging. Obviously, the kid can sling it. You feel good about Spallina behind the net. It's funny that all this stuff we're talking about with Cuse, we're not really talking about their best player, maybe the best player in the country so far is with Joe Spallina. And then you feel really good about Hiltz sweeping back over the top. They do a lot of good stuff where they run guys at him, they throw it to him, then he can sweep over the top, and he's been outstanding on that so far. So, there's just all these different things. So if you're Maryland going into a game and you have to say, well, what's 1A that we want to stop? I heard a great saying. I'm going to borrow a phrase from my friend Craig Chick, assistant coach at UMBC, my current teammate. He likes to say, don't let their best players be their best players. It's very hard against Syracuse because their best players are a lot of guys and they do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So very difficult.
Yeah.
And then the other takeaway I had was with Grace and Dwan. I thought back to the movie The Social Network. We're going for another fire tornado thing here. When the Winklevoss twins goes, I'm 6'5", 220, and there's two of me. That's Billy Dwan and Michael Grace. They look the same on the field, and they're really dynamic. So I think Syracuse's short sticks are going to have to be good. Maryland hasn't really been going at poles the whole time. They're obviously playing a lot of guys, so would expect them to not go at Dwan and Spanos a ton. When they do go at him, Dwan and Grace, it'll likely be Spanos. That's a lot of meat on meat. That'll be a fun one to watch. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think, the call out in the midfield is good, particularly two-man games in the midfield. I think Towson showed you that if you try and go under a pick set for Luke Roa, it's like trying to go under a pick set for Steph Curry at the 3-point line. Like it's not going to go well for you.
Yeah.
And if you don't get through those picks, clean and staying disruptive to him, it's not going to go well for you. But I would also call out with all those Q's weapons, Logan McNaney can be an equalizer in the game where whoever it is that takes the shot, they have to beat him. He made 14 stops, went 54% against Q's last year. In 2022, 12 saves, again, 54%. The saves per game for him is a little above his career average when he plays Q's, and his save percentage is right at his career average. He's not scared of these guys. He's ready for the moment against a team as good as the Syracuse offense can be. So all those things that Q's will do to create offense, at the end of the day, they also have to figure out, like, if McNaney is ready for shots from everybody, then he can be an equalizer for Maryland too.
Yeah, Logie's from just up the road there in Corning, New York, about an hour-ish from the Dome, so I know he loves playing at home. Also loves classic rock. Not sure if that's ever been mentioned on a broadcast before. All right, so that should be fun. Again, if you're watching this, you probably realize I'm a Maryland fan. Call me biased if you want. No kidding. Hopkins. We already talked about that one. Excuse me. Let's talk Princeton, Penn State. First look at Princeton this year. A lot of weapons. Penn State looked very good last week in the second half. Bit of a really sicko first half, to be honest with you. Just a lot of slips, a lot of bad ball, ball control. So what are you kind of watching for in this one?
I am a guy who's comically high on Princeton. I vote in the media. In the media poll, I've voted them number 2 every week since the preseason. I have them as the number 2 team in the country, even though they haven't played yet. I have Coulter McAsee as my Tewaaraton pick for the year. Like I am very much a Princeton believer this year. I think the questions for the Tigers or the question marks you have are in some scary places, right? We talked about how good Gian Ficarro is. The problem is he's wearing Carolina blue now and he's not playing for Princeton anymore. Yeah. So losing him in net, the struggle with him is that you talked about, like, you can tell he's a leader for them. A captain for Carolina right away, but he also, like, his best games, and when you saw him playing his best lacrosse, was on these giant stages. Like, his Ivy League tournament games were always insane. Like, he against conference opponents, he's always really good. And this is the kind of game where I think, like, an opener against a ranked team is where you want a guy like that who's a proven leader in that and dials it up even more because it's a big game. Princeton's not going to have him. And then, you lose some defensive midfield with, like, a guy like Marquez White isn't there, who's, I know his stats aren't always big, but, like, as a short stick D-midi, he was an excellent player for them. He's like a short stick D-midi who's not going to have a lot of depth against Penn State. You wonder what those matchups are going to be like. Close defense is maybe not as much as a place as I'm concerned as others. I'm a believer in Colin Mulshine. I think Michael Bath can play up high or down low. I like Hunter Spiess as he's a young guy, but he's like a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. If he's in the mix, I would trust him to be good, particularly going from defense to offense. He was always great at that at Brunswick. But look, Mulshine is a guy who's been a top cover man in the Ivy. That means he has to go against Brandow and Kirst and King. Like his attack matchups every week in that conference are all Bears. So, I kind of trust him there, I think. A place that I look for Princeton to have success is the faceoff spot again. It's the other spot I'll always highlight, but McMeekin was 55% last year, also had 8 goals. He's dangerous going forward. Colby Baldwin is only 59% for Penn State, and the competition he's had so far is not going to be as good as I think McMeekin is. So obviously we know the Tiger offense is stacked. Mackesy, Kabiri, Chad Palumbo, Colin Burns, all 4 of those guys, 35 points or more last year. You have Sean Cameron in the midfield. You have Tucker Wade in the midfield. Wade, Kabiri, and Burns were freshmen a year ago, so they are back now as sophomores. Like the offensive side of the ball here, I honestly think it's like approaching Syracuse-esque with how loaded they are. I think Penn State's production predominantly to this point has come from Trainer and from Kyle Lehman. They've combined for 20 points for Penn State. That's about half of the production on the team. So, my kind of takeaway here is I look at McMeekin winning a faceoff edge. I look at Mulshine ideally able to limit a guy, Matt Trainer or Lehman, however they use him, and try and take away a top weapon and see if Penn State can beat you with guys that aren't named Trainer and Lehman. See if Ethan Long is up to that, whoever it may be. But I like kind of the way Princeton stacks up on paper in this matchup. So the Tigers' offense is going to be great, but the same way I said Logan McNaney is an equalizer, Jack Frackion can be an equalizer in this game for all those weapons Princeton has. They still have to get it by him in the end, and it's a tough goalie to beat. So that's kind of my read going into the game. Is I like where Princeton's at, but Penn State is by no means an easy out.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one, especially on the Princeton offense versus Penn State defense. Penn State's defense is legit. They're aggressive, they're mean, they're well coached. No surprise that a Jeff Tambroni-led team has an aggressive, mean, well-coached defense. That's been one of his MOs for a long time, why he's a legend of the sport. And they were pretty impressive in that second half. And then the big note I had out of the Nova game was Trainer is really, really good. And no kidding, preseason All-American, yada, yada. But he was impressive in that game. He can really shoot it. He's got a lot more juice as this kind of secondary dodger. If you're going to close out to him, you got to be careful. He can really go by you. I did want to say he's not a midi. He's playing attack. So, dear voters, as a former college midfielder who got really annoyed by this, don't put Trainer on your team as a All-American midi because he's going to lead the middies in scoring by a boatload because he's playing attack. So let's call that the Connor Kelly 2018
I was going to say, it's the classic, what position does Connor Kelly play question.
Yeah, it's like, well, he's out there for every fast break and every face-off, and then he just goes up to the midfield when the possession starts, but that means he's an attackman. And, of course, no disrespect, Connor Kelly, one of the great players of all time, still leading the NLL almost in gold. So it's disrespect directed towards the voters, not towards the players that do it. But we have to have a better feel for this.
The guy who voted Matt Trainer as a preseason All-American midfielder, which I did do. This is disrespect for me.
Well, preseason is totally acceptable. He was a midi last year. He is not playing midfield this year, at least to this standpoint. He might be the best attackman in the Big Ten. The kid's a stud. I'm looking forward to that. And my offense coordinator for Cannons, Jim Mitchell, one of the smartest minds I've been around, so looking forward to seeing what he does with this team. Princeton, one of the best recruiters in the country. So when you talk about close defense, having some guys to replace, they're a team I worry about a lot less. Again, recruiting, not a perfect proxy for success, but it's one of the best ones out there, especially when you're talking about on-ball play. If you can guard the ball, you can do a lot of things. I expect the challenge for Penn State to be drawing slides. We'll see how they do that. The face-off will be interesting as well. Okay, I had Penn Georgetown written down. We've already talked a lot of Georgetown on the show in general, so maybe just a thought on Penn or the Ivy League. Let's kind of wrap this up with maybe just any thoughts you have.
Yeah, I think kind of looking at the way we talked about Georgetown earlier, man, they had a hard time shooting. Man, they hard time with accuracy and kind of winning on the offensive end despite all their possession. This matchup this weekend is going to be an opportunity for them to basically make good on all of that because it's the same kind of thing. Like I would expect Georgetown to have a face-off edge in this game. I would expect them to probably do pretty well on ground balls with their defensive midfield and some of their, their play between the lines. Georgetown's got to be going against a defense that has Brendan Lavelle, that has Ethan Till, that has Emmett Carroll in net. it's not going to be like, we get an easier defense to see this week. It's going to be like seeing Hopkins again with a bunch of really good pulls, a really good goalie, maybe the best goalie in America. If you shoot poorly again, you can't find the cage again. Like, you're not going to steal any or get any cheap ones against Emmett Carroll. It's just not going to go your way. Yeah. So the way I kind of look at this game is Georgetown, like everything you're probably going to see on film that you say, I need to do that better this weekend. You need to do it a lot better because the matchup is going to be such that bad shooting is a recipe for a bad game against Penn.
Yeah, no doubt about it there. Maybe the best close defenseman and the best goaltender in America, arguably, on Penn. That's a pretty good start to overcome there. One thing I'm watching all year, wrote an article about this. Sean Light last year from Notre Dame was basically remarkably good in the playoffs. I think he's got to be the favorite for the Schmeisser. Lavelle is another guy who's right there. Likely going to be him, Scott Smith from Hopkins, or Sean Light. So something to watch as they get going. Speaking of major awards, I believe most people's favorite for the Tewaaraton, CJ Kurse gets going on Saturday against Lehigh, so fun to watch there. Inside Lacrosse did a great article of his brothers describing CJ today. It's been a real honor in my career to play with so many of them, and a great thing to read. So I've been lucky on the Cannons, Colin and Connor, Desert Dogs with Connor. I was at Cornell with CJ, although we didn't get to play that year, and I know Cole as well. Caden and I got to break bread here at some point, but I just love watching them play, and a good article there if you're looking for something to read before the games get going.
Yeah, the Kurse lead all of lacrosse in speaking while smiling. They're always happy to be speaking to you.
Yeah.
They're just like, there's nobody that's just more joyful about playing lacrosse and talking about it than the Kurse.
And by the way, if you love that, then you should follow the English brothers too, because they also are awesome. There's also 4 of them playing in college lacrosse pretty soon, and great players. They also are outstanding people, similar to their Kurse. Their folks are great. As you heard, they're going to 3 games this weekend: Carolina, Hopkins, and Maryland.
And Hughes. And
Hughes, yeah. Either way, a lot of travel, and just good for them, lacrosse diehards like us. So that's all we got for today. Thanks for listening to the College Lacrosse Show. Where are you going to go this weekend? You going to the St. James?
I am going down to the St. James. I'm leaving Thursday morning, so I will be there for the Thursday night games. And then I will try and find something to do with myself during the day. The games are at like 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock now. They used to be kind of in the middle of the day, so you could just kind of go there and be there. But I'll have to find some place that's going to show college lacrosse on Saturday afternoon before those night games start. So it'll be a fun weekend, but I will be in DC for Sixes for the duration of CPLL and WLL. And I will be back on Monday to be catching up on games and getting ready to get myself put the ESPN Plus and Flow Live and Big Ten Plus all to work over the weekend for some replays.
Well, RJ Bentley's at Maryland, legendary spot, worth checking out if you're in the neighborhood. But thanks for listening, folks. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Dan's work is at Sticks in Lacrosse, as always, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.